Day 25 of the trip, and I wake up to a nice day on Orkney. I was in the municipal campsite in Stromness. There is a World War II gun battery, or the remains of it, just around the corner, so it's worth taking the cycle around. It's probably a couple of kilometres. Some of it is fenced off, but you can take pictures through the fence and get an idea of what exactly it was covering. The vast improvements in the weather did mean that I was going to get to visit most of the Neolithic sites on Orkney that I'd wanted to see, and actually have the pleasure of doing it without getting rained on constantly and blown around the place. First of all, I cycled through the streets of Stromness. This is the old road that runs next to the coast through it. And then up the hill on the outside and on our way to the first of these sites, which is at Skara Brae. Now, Skara Brae was a village about 6,500 years ago, unusually with the interiors of the houses, all the furniture built in stone and then covered in sand, so it was perfectly preserved when it was later rediscovered. So here we're looking down into one of the actual houses. This was buried in sand for about 6,000 years, and then during a storm the sand was blown off it and it was rediscovered in quite recent history and is now open to the public. You should buy tickets in advance. It can be hard to get in. And then here we are inside a replica. It's an exact replica of the most elaborate of the houses, which gives you an idea of exactly what they looked like inside. The remarkable thing is, because there wasn't really much wood in the islands, none of the furniture was built with wood. It was all built with stone, which means it was completely preserved for us to see today. So it really gives you a very different sense when you're in one of these and you're seeing what the actual furnishings of the time were, and a connection perhaps with people who lived in the past that you don't get when all you're seeing is foundations and solid stone structures. There's also a small museum on site with the usual information notice boards and some exhibits including tools. So this trip I'm getting a few things off my bucket list. Canaanish on Lewis was one obvious one, and the other one was Skara Brae, which I'm just leaving now, which is a village from about 6,500 years ago, that because the only real building material was stone, everything is preserved, including the internal dressers and all that, and beds and everything else in the house. So it's fantastic to see that, and I'm now heading back to the stones of Stromness and the Ring of Broderick, so it's a great thing altogether. It lashed rain my first 2 days here, but the third day is behaving, and I'm catching the ferry out this afternoon, which is kind of the continuation of the great journey back home again. If you're into the Neolithic, this is a great side trip because all these sites are very close to Stromness. You could literally get the ferry across, get a bike there and cycle around them in the course of a day. And again, it's one of those instances where cycling is really a great way of viewing these landscapes as you're moving at a speed that's much closer to the speed the inhabitants would have moved at back at the time. I think cars actually take a lot away from re-experiencing these and having a sense of what they were really like. But anyway, this is a whole complex of stone circles, standing stones, cairns, and other parts that are still in the process of being excavated. This area is basically a long isthmus between two lochs, one of which is salt or brackish water, the other of which is fresh water. The farming here appears to be fairly low key, so there's a lot of wildflowers, as you can see. I think there's probably just been grazed by sheep, but a very spectacular time of the year, I suspect, to visit from that point of view as well. The heather was out. There were not that many tourists. I mean, there's a reasonable amount of people visiting this, but the sites are so big in themselves, you really had a lot of space to yourself. And I was really lucky and grateful that I did get that one day of decent weather on Orkney, that I could experience all this without constantly having to hide from the the rain that was falling. This is me heading back towards the first circle I'd visited the previous day, which is the Stones of Stromness, and then there is a single very tall standing stone just at the edge of this particular causeway, which is kind of linking the two big stone circles. I guess it's about at the midway point between the two. These, I'm fascinated by these complexes because we don't really know what they were about. Perhaps it was some form of religion or worship, but it's so long ago, of course, that nobody really knows. And then as a final treat, if you're at the Stones of Stromness, it's not that well signposted, but there is a second village just down beside the stones towards the coast. It's worth taking the 5-minute stroll down there to have a look and drink in the atmosphere, if you like, of this ancient landscape where humans have been for a very long period of time now. And then it was off Orkney and the ferry back to mainland Scotland. On arrival, I was on a 25-kilometre race to the caravan site I had booked in that night, but I was going to arrive after the arrivals time had officially ended. I had been in contact and they said it was okay, and they also allowed me to put in an order for a meal at the restaurant, as I was going to arrive just minutes before that was due to close as well.